Hi there, welcome back to History with Ali. After having several episodes where we talked about fixation, it is time to start talking about the second most important step in histology, and that is processing. This will be a series of many videos. So, let's start from what is processing? Processing tissue usually means going through three main steps: dehydration, clearing, and infiltration. Then, we have a few extra, more specialized steps like embedding, decalcification, or frozen sections. The important thing is that the choice of fixative and the processing method should be decided before or right after the tissue is removed during surgery or an autopsy. And the ultimate goal of processing is to help the paraffin infiltrate the tissue so it can be cut in the microtome. The method you choose will also determine the type of fixative. For example, frozen sections usually skip fixation at first, but once the pathology makes the diagnosis, that same tissue then goes through the regular fixation and processing steps, just like any other sample. After fixation, the real processing steps begin, starting with dehydration. Dehydration is all about removing water from the tissue so it can be embedded in materials like paraffin, celluloiding, or plastics, things that can't get through water-filled tissue. Now, here's the balance. We only need to remove free water. If too much bound water is taken out, the tissue gets hard, brittle, and tough to section. But if the dehydration is incomplete, clearing won't work properly, and you will end up with soft, mushy tissue. That is actually the most common processing problem. Dehydrating agents handle this in two ways. Some pull water out directly because they are hydrophilic, while others work step by step, gradually replacing the water through dilution. When it comes to dehydration, alcohols are the main agents we use. But here's the catch. Even absolute alcohol usually has about 1 to 2% water in it. To check if there is too much water, you can mix the alcohol with xylene or toluene. If it stays cloudy, that means excess water is still there. Since small, colorless biopsies are tricky to spot during embedding, we often add eosine or fluoxetine to lightly stain the tissue pink. These dyes are safe for the tissue and won't mess with later staining. But avoid mercurochrome. It contains toxic mercury and contaminates your reagents. Even though alcohol is the most common dehydrating agent, there are actually quite a few others out there. Let's start with the big one, ethanol. Ethanol is the same alcohol found in beverages, which is why its purchase is heavily regulated unless it's denatured, meaning mixed with methanol or isopropanol to make it undrinkable. It's considered the same dehydrant because it's fast, reliable, and it mixes well with both water and many solvents. In practice, many labs use denatured or reagent alcohol instead of pure ethanol to avoid strict regulations. The downside is that it has a stronger odor and sometimes contains additives that can cause stain fading. So, the ideal dehydration process goes like this. You want to move step by step, starting around 60 to 65% ethanol, then going through 2 changes of 95%, and finally 2 changes of absolute ethanol. This gradually approaches minimizing tissue shrinkage. If you skip ahead straight to 95%, you save time, but you also risk creating artifacts. And if you're working with phosphate buffer fixative, you should start below 70% to avoid salt precipitates that make section harder. Every laboratory has its own protocols and rules, but this is the basic information. One more thing, don't leave tissue in absolute alcohol too long, or it will shrink and harden excessively. The next in line is methyl alcohol. It is a clear, flammable liquid with a kind of an unpleasant smell. We don't really use it just for dehydration. Sometimes it is used like ethanol, but its main job is fixing blood smears. The big thing with methanol is safety. It is extremely toxic. Your liver actually turns into formaldehyde, and that can cause blindness or even death. You definitely need skin protection because it can be absorbed right through your skin. Next is isopropyl alcohol or isopropanol. This one is pretty common as a substitute for ethanol when you are processing tissue in paraffin, but it does not work everywhere. Like with staining, eosine won't dissolve in it, and you can't use it with celluloiding techniques. The good thing is that it's easy to get. There are no government restrictions, and it causes less shrinkage and hardening than ethanol. The downside is that it's never 100% pure. It always has 1% water, so tissues can hold on to some moisture. Then we have butyl alcohol or butanol. This one can dehydrate both plant and animal tissues, but it works slowly. It has a strong smell, low dehydrating power, and tissues need longer exposure. The nice part is that it causes less shrinkage and hardening than ethanol, so it's useful if you are following slower processing protocols. Finally, acetone. Acetone is a fast and inexpensive, which makes it very popular, but it can cause excessive tissue shrinkage. It is really volatile and it absorbs water from the air, so in open processors, the levels are hard to maintain. It is also a highly flammable reagent, so each of these dehydrants has its own pros and cons, and depending on the situation, you might use one over the other. But in my experience, in all labs that I've worked, they use ethanol alcohol. To end, always remember all chemicals mentioned in this video must be handled with great care and respect. Follow your lab safety protocols and comply with OSHA and other regulatory guidelines to ensure a safe working environment. Safety first, always. And for more detailed explanations and examples, be sure to refer to the Frida Carson textbook. And if you're following along, do not forget to like, comment, and subscribe so you do not miss the next episode. Thank you.